The alien city was always loud, always bright, but not for him. The little alien boy moved slowly through the streets, his one leg weak and bent. Every step looked painful, his body shaking as he tried to balance. He carried a small basket almost empty, and his eyes searched the ground as if he hoped to find food dropped by accident. The crowd around him did not care. Tall aliens walked fast, their fine clothes brushing his face. Some looked down at him with disgust, others with laughter. One group of young alien boys pointed at him, shouting cruel words. "Look at him, the broken one," they said, their voices loud like knives. The boy lowered his head, ashamed, and tried to walk faster, but his weak leg betrayed him. He fell face first, his basket rolling away. The crowd passed by as if nothing happened. Feet stepped close, but nobody reached out a hand. From the other side of the street, a man watched, a human, dressed in simple worker's clothes, his hands rough from labor. He had just finished his long shift in the metal yards, his body tired, but when he saw the boy fall, something in him froze. He could not look away. No one else moved to help. It was as if kindness had no place in this city. The boy pushed himself up with shaking arms, his knees bleeding. He looked at his basket lying near the gutter, dirt mixing with the few crumbs inside. His lips trembled and his eyes watered, but no sound came out. The human stepped forward. Slowly at first, he knew the rules. Humans were not supposed to interfere with alien children, especially not in the capital city. It was dangerous. But the sight of the boy, small, broken, and alone, was too much. The human bent down and picked up the basket. "Here," he said softly, his voice calm. The boy looked up, shocked, his large alien eyes blinking in disbelief. No one had spoken to him kindly for years. The human reached out his hand, but the boy hesitated. Around them, whispers started. "Look, the human is touching him. Does he not fear the law? Foolish creature, he will be punished." The man ignored the whispers. He took the boy's small hand and gently pulled him to his feet. The boy leaned on him, his weak leg shaking for the first time. He felt the warmth of someone's arm holding him steady. The boy whispered in a fragile voice, Why are you helping me?" The human smiled, though his heart raced from the stares of the crowd. "Because no one else will," he answered. The crowd grew restless. Some shook their heads, others laughed bitterly. One merchant shouted, "Human, leave him. Do you want trouble?" But the man stayed where he was. He took a piece of cloth from his own pocket, torn and dirty from work. He bent down and tied it gently around the boy's bleeding knee. The boy's eyes widened as if he had never felt such care before. It was a small thing, but in that moment it meant the world. The human then lifted the basket, brushed off the dirt, and placed it back into the boy's hands. "There," he said. "Better now." The boy held the basket close to his chest. His thin arms shaking, he could not stop staring at the man. It was as if this simple act of kindness was magic, something rare and impossible. For a second, he forgot the pain in his leg. He forgot the cruel laughter of the crowd. But not everyone was silent. From the corner of the street, a guard in shining armor watched with cold eyes. He placed a hand on his weapon, ready to report what he saw. A human helping a broken alien child. This was no small matter. It was against the rules. The boy belonged to higher blood than the human could ever know. The guard turned away quickly, his face dark, already planning to deliver the news to the palace. The human did not see the guard, he only saw the boy. The child's face lit up with the smallest of smiles, weak but real, and the man felt his chest tighten. This was not just about kindness anymore. It was about something larger, something dangerous. But he could not take back what he had done. He had crossed a line, and now his life would never be the same. The boy whispered again, his voice trembling. "Thank you." "Human." The man nodded, but his eyes scanned the crowd. The whispers had grown louder. Every step he had taken to help the boy had been watched, and soon the city itself would turn against him. Yet in that moment, standing in the middle of the busy alien street, with the child holding his basket and smiling through pain, the man knew one thing for certain. He had done the right thing, even if the cost would be his freedom, even if the price would be his life. And above, far beyond the crowded streets, the emperor himself sat in his golden palace, unaware that a single act of human kindness had already set the stage for his fury. And for the storm that was about to come, night had fallen on the alien city. The lights of the market had dimmed and the crowd was gone. Shadows stretched across the broken streets where silence finally ruled. Inside a small workshop at the edge of the metal yards, the human sat alone, his hands rough and blistered, his body tired from a full day's labor, but his eyes stayed awake, his mind restless. He could not forget the child with the lame leg, the pain in his eyes, the trembling smile when he was lifted up. The human stared at a pile of wooden scraps and bent metal rods on the floor. He worked as a repairman, often fixing tools and carts for the aliens, but tonight he worked for something else. He picked up a long wooden stick, measured it against his own arm, and then cut it down with a rusty blade. Piece by piece he began to build. The sound of scraping wood filled the room, echoing like whispers in the night. His heart beat faster with every stroke. He knew what he was making, a crutch, something simple, yet something that could change the boy's life. But he also knew the danger. Helping an alien child was already a crime. Building something to fix him would only make matters worse. Still, he worked with steady hands. Every nail hammered into the wood was an act of defiance. Every knot tied with rope was a message of hope. Outside, the city guards walked the streets, their heavy boots striking the ground, their sharp eyes searching for anyone who broke the Emperor's laws. The human heard them pass by. He froze, holding his breath. The hammer in his hand trembled. If they entered his workshop now, they would see what he was building. But the guards moved on, their shadows fading into the night. The man let out a long breath, sweat dripping down his forehead. He whispered to himself, "No one will know. No one will take this from him." Hours passed, and the crutch took shape. It was not perfect, but it was strong. A solid piece of wood wrapped in leather strips for comfort. A small handle at the top where the boy's hand could grip. It was more than wood and rope, it was a chance. A chance for the child to stand tall without falling. The human looked at it and smiled faintly. He had built many things in his life, but never something so meaningful. Morning came. The alien streets filled again with merchants. Buyers and beggars. Among them was the lame boy. He moved carefully through the crowd, dragging his weak leg, his basket empty as always. The human spotted him near the market corner. The boy's head lowered, his steps slow and painful. The human approached quietly, holding the crutch wrapped in cloth. "Come with me," he whispered. The boy hesitated, fear flashing in his eyes. "What if they see?" he asked, his voice shaky. The man knelt down, his eyes calm. "They will not see, not here, not now." He led the boy into a quiet alley. Hidden between tall walls, the boy clutched his basket close, his heart pounding. The human unwrapped the cloth. Revealing the crutch, the boy gasped, his eyes wide. "For me?" The man nodded. "Yes, for you. Try it." The boy reached out with trembling fingers. He gripped the handle, his thin arm shaking from weakness. He leaned on it, slowly pressing his weight for a moment. He thought it would break, but it held firm and steady. The boy lifted his weak leg and took a step. Then another, and another. His face changed. Pain mixed with joy, disbelief mixed with hope. A sound escaped his lips, a soft laugh that turned into tears. I can walk," he whispered, his voice breaking. The man smiled, watching silently. It was the first time he had seen the boy's eyes shine with life, but their moment was fragile. From the end of the alley, a shadow moved. A merchant had followed them, curious. He narrowed his eyes when he saw the crutch. A human giving gifts? Helping the broken one? He muttered. He turned quickly, rushing back to the market. The man's heart sank. Word would spread again, and this time it would spread faster. The boy took another step, unaware of the danger. His joy too bright, his heart too full. He looked at the man with tears in his eyes. "Why do you help me?" "No one else does." The man's face hardened, but his voice stayed gentle. "Because sometimes one act of kindness is all the world needs." The boy hugged the crutch close, as if it were treasure. He did not know that this gift was also a curse, for already the whispers were running through the streets. Already the Emperor's ears were waiting. And soon this act of kindness would be judged as a crime punishable by chains or death. Yet in that small alley, with the boy taking his first steady steps, the world felt different. For the first time, the boy felt strong. For the first time, the human felt proud. And for the first time, the Empire trembled, though it did not know why. The sun rose over the alien city, golden light spilling across the rooftops. The market came alive with voices, carts rolling, and vendors calling out their goods. But beneath the noise, something darker moved, whispers, soft and sharp like hidden knives. They say the human built him a crutch, one merchant muttered, arranging bright fruits on a stall. I saw it with my own eyes, another answered quickly, his voice low. The broken boy walked and he laughed. With a human's help? A woman nearby shook her head, her eyes wide with both fear and fascination. If the Emperor hears of this, the human will be punished. No mercy. The rumor spread like fire through dry grass. Every corner of the market carried the story. From the spice stalls to the blacksmith's forge, from the beggars in the alleys to the nobles passing through, everyone spoke of the same thing. A human, daring to show kindness, daring to heal what the Emperor called unworthy. The boy, unaware of how dangerous his joy had become, walked slowly into the market. The crutch under his arm gave him new strength. Each step was steadier than the last. Each movement more confident. He held his basket tightly, and though his clothes were still torn, he walked with a pride he never knew before. Some stared in silence, their mouths open. Others whispered angrily, that child was meant to remain broken, cursed from birth. And now a human has changed fate. This is forbidden. But there were also eyes that softened. Old women who once ignored him now looked away with guilt. Young children pointed, whispering not in mockery but in wonder. Look, he walks. The broken one walks. The human stayed near the edge of the crowd, his heart heavy as he saw heads turning. Voices rising, he had wanted only to give the boy hope. Not to invite the attention of an empire, but there was no undoing what had been done, and no silencing the whispers that spread faster than the morning wind. Suddenly a guard appeared at the far end of the market, his armor bright, his weapon shining. The crowd hushed, fear wrapping around them like a chain. The guard's eyes swept across the stalls, and his gaze fell on the boy, the crutch in his hand, the strange steadiness in his walk. The guard narrowed his eyes. This should not be, he muttered. He turned and whispered to another soldier at his side. Send word to the palace. Tell them the human's crime is true. The second guard nodded and vanished into the crowd. The first guard stayed behind, watching. The boy felt his stare and trembled. But then he looked at the human standing nearby. The man gave a small nod of courage, and the boy straightened his shoulders. For the first time in his life, he did not lower his head. Still, the danger was rising. In the taverns, in the courtyards, in the shadowy alleys, voices grew louder. Some were angry, calling for punishment. A human fixing what the Emperor left broken? This is rebellion. Others whispered with hope, their voices trembling. Maybe humans are not as weak as we were told. Maybe kindness is stronger than cruelty. But the human knew the truth. Both sides would bring trouble. The Emperor would not allow such whispers to grow. For an empire built on fear cannot survive hope. And hope had been born in the form of a child's smile and a simple crutch. Later that day, as the sun began to set, the human walked the boy back through the streets. The boy's steps were slow but steady. He looked up at the man with wide eyes. Do you think they will let me walk like this always? The human's throat tightened. He wanted to promise yes, but the weight of the stairs around them told him otherwise. Instead, he placed a hand on the boy's shoulder. As long as I am here, you will walk, he said. From a nearby rooftop, a shadowy figure watched them, a messenger of the Emperor cloaked in dark robes. He saw the boy's steps, the human's hand, the crutch gleaming in the fading light, and he smiled coldly. The Emperor will want to hear this, he whispered before disappearing into the dusk. That night, in the palace of gold and stone, the news reached the throne room. The Emperor sat tall, his face hidden behind a mask of jewels. He listened in silence as the messenger spoke. A human had interfered. A human had dared to touch royal blood. For the broken boy was not just any child, he was a son of the royal line. Cursed and shamed, hidden from the court's eyes. The Emperor's fists tightened on his throne. No human will shame my blood, he thundered. Find him. Arrest him. His kindness will be his crime. And so, as the city slept, soldiers prepared their armor. Their orders clear, their purpose cruel, while in a small, quiet home near the metal yards, the human sat with the boy, the crutch resting by the door. Neither of them knew that the Empire's wrath was already marching toward them, and the whispers in the market had become a storm. The golden palace of the Emperor rose high above the city, its towers glowing under the light of 1,000 lamps. Inside the throne room, silence hung heavy, broken only by the crackle of fire and tall braziers. The Emperor sat on his throne of black stone and gold, his jeweled crown heavy on his head. Before him knelt the messenger who had returned from the market, his voice trembling as he repeated the story. A human touched the broken child, Your Majesty. He gave him a crutch, and now the boy walks steady as any other. The Emperor's eyes, sharp and merciless, burned with rage behind his mask. His fists clenched on the arms of his throne, and the floor itself seemed to tremble. No one fixes what I declare broken, he thundered. No human will dare to challenge my will. The court fell silent. Nobles lowering their heads, afraid to breathe. The Emperor rose, his robe sweeping the marble floor like a shadow. Send my guards into the streets, he ordered. Find this human, tear him from his home, and make him kneel before me. The order spread quickly through the palace. Horns sounded, boots thundered, and the Emperor's soldiers poured into the city like a dark flood. Shields gleamed under torchlight, swords flashed. Their shouts echoed across alleys and markets. By order of the Emperor, surrender the human who defied the crown. The city awoke in fear. Doors slammed shut, lights went out, and whispers turned into silence. Families hid in their homes, afraid to be caught even watching. But in the small workshop near the metal yards, the human already knew trouble was coming. He sat in the dim light, his rough hands gripping the edge of his workbench. Beside him, the boy clutched the crutch, his large alien eyes wide with fear. They are coming for you, the boy whispered. His voice shaking, the man forced a calm smile, though his chest felt heavy. Don't be afraid, he said. I will not leave you, but outside. The sound of soldiers grew louder. The ground shook with their march. The clang of armor filled the air. The boy trembled. They will kill you, human. Because of me. The man placed a hand on his shoulder. Steady and strong. Kindness is never a crime. No matter what they say. Then came the first knock on the door, loud, heavy, commanding, open. By order of the Emperor. The boy's heart leapt into his throat. The human stood, his jaw tight. He blew out the lamp and pulled the boy toward the back door. They slipped into the night just as the soldiers broke the front open, splinters flying across the workshop floor. The chase began. Through narrow alleys they ran, the boy leaning on his crutch but moving faster than ever before. The human lifted him when he stumbled, carrying him over walls and through hidden paths. Behind them the roar of soldiers grew. Stop the human. Capture him alive. The city itself seemed to turn hostile. Torches lit every corner. Banners of the Emperor hung over stone walls. Eyes peered from windows, some filled with fear, others with anger. But none dared to help. The boy clung to the man's back, his small voice whispering through tears. They won't stop. They won't forgive. The man only tightened his grip. Then let them come, he said. I will never let them take you. Meanwhile, in the palace, the Emperor listened as more messengers rushed in. The market is filled with whispers, my lord, one said nervously. They say the human gave the boy hope. They say the child smiles now. The Emperor's face twisted with fury. Hope? He spat the word like poison. Hope belongs to me and me alone. If the people see a human as a savior, then my throne itself is at risk. He struck the floor with his scepter, the sound booming across the hall. Crush him. Make an example so great that no human, no slave, no beggar will ever dare kindness again. Back in the streets, the hunt continued. The human ducked into an abandoned warehouse. The boy breathing hard in his arms, he set the child down and pressed his back against the wall. In the distance, torches flickered closer, soldiers spreading like wolves. The boy looked up at him, tears in his eyes. Why don't you leave me? If you run, you can escape. The man shook his head. Because your life matters more than mine. I will not abandon you. The boy's heart twisted with guilt and wonder. No one had ever said such words to him. No one had ever believed he was worth saving. Outside, the soldiers shouted, Surround the building. He cannot escape this time. Boots thundered, swords drew, and the sound of iron rattled against wood. The man pulled the boy close, whispering, Stay quiet. Stay strong. The soldiers burst inside. Torches blazing, eyes sharp. The human stood tall, shielding the boy with his body. Even as blades pointed at his chest, he did not step aside. The boy clung to his crutch, trembling. And in that moment, as the firelight painted the walls red, the human knew the Emperor's wrath had arrived, and their lives would never be the same again. The warehouse doors burst open with a crash. Flames of the soldiers' torches spilled across the floor, chasing away the dark. The human stood in front of the boy, his body tense like a shield. Blades gleamed, boots stomped closer, and the sound of armor filled the air like thunder. "Seize him," the captain shouted. His voice echoed against the empty walls. The soldiers moved forward, their swords raised, but in that instant, the human grabbed a rusted metal pipe from the ground. His eyes narrowed, his jaw tight. He had no armor, no weapon worthy of battle. Yet he stood tall as if he had nothing left to lose. The boy clung to his crutch. His heart pounding in his chest, he wanted to scream. But fear locked his voice inside. The soldiers lunged, and the human swung the pipe with all his strength. It struck against a shield with a loud clang, sparks flying. The soldiers stumbled back. Surprised by the human's courage, "Run!" the man shouted to the boy. But the boy shook his head. Refusing to leave him, the soldiers pushed again. Their numbers too many. The man shoved a barrel into their path. Sending it rolling, the flames flickered, smoke rose. Confusion spread for a moment. He pulled the boy into the shadows of the back door. They slipped out just as the torches filled the warehouse. By the time the soldiers stormed forward, the two were gone. Their footsteps vanished into the night. The city was a maze of stone and light. Narrow alleys twisted like veins. Rooftops leaned close. The human ran with the boy pressed against his side. The crutch tapped against the ground with each desperate step. Behind them, the sound of horns blared. "After them! Do not let the human escape!" The boy's breaths came fast and broken. Where will we go?" he whispered. The man's eyes searched the shadows, sharp and determined. "Anywhere they cannot find us." "Hold on." They darted into a narrow passage between two crumbling walls. The man pressed the boy against the cold stone, listening. Torches flickered nearby. Voices barked orders. "They went this way!" "Search every corner." The man's hand tightened around the boy's shoulder. He whispered softly, "Stay quiet. Do not move." The soldiers passed by, their shadows stretching long across the alley. The man held his breath until the sound of their boots faded. Only then did he move again, leading the boy deeper into the city's underbelly. They passed through a marketplace now empty and silent. Shutters closed, stalls abandoned. The smell of spices still hung in the air. Mixed with smoke and fear, the boy's crutch tapped softly, each sound echoing in the quiet night. The human's ears stayed sharp, catching every distant horn, every bark of a dog. The city was alive with hunters, and he was their prey. Soon they reached the old district here. Buildings leaned broken, streets covered with dust and ash. Few dared to live here, for it was said the emperor had cursed this part long ago. The man pushed open a wooden gate and guided the boy inside. It was an abandoned courtyard, half broken, filled with shadows. "We rest here," he said, setting the boy down. The boy looked at him with wide, fearful eyes. "They will catch you. They always catch everyone." The man knelt, placing both hands on the boy's shoulders. "Not tonight. Tonight we keep running. Tonight we survive." But even as he spoke, the boy's face fell, his large alien eyes glistened with tears. "Why? Why risk your life for me? I am nothing. I am broken. Everyone says so." The man's voice grew firm, his tone cutting through the boy's despair. "You are not broken. You are alive. And that means you matter." The boy's lips trembled. No one had ever spoken to him like that before. No one had ever given him worth. He held the crutch tighter, his heart heavy but burning with new strength. Suddenly the night split with a horn, loud and sharp. The soldiers had tracked them to the district. Their torches lit up the streets once more. Shadows stretched over the walls of the courtyard. The man pulled the boy to his feet. "We must go now." They slipped through a back opening in the wall, running again through winding alleys. The boy stumbled, his leg weak, but the crutch held him steady. The man lifted him when he faltered, carrying him on his back. The boy's arms wrapped around his neck. His face pressed against the man's shoulder for the first time. He felt safe even while the whole empire hunted them. The chase carried them into the old tunnels beneath the city. Dark, damp, the smell of stone and water filling the air. The man lit a small lantern, the flame trembling. "Here." "They cannot find us easily," he whispered. The boy looked around with fear. "But what if they do?" The man's jaw tightened. "Then they will have to fight me first." Above them, the city roared with soldiers searching. Below, in the shadows, the human and the boy moved like ghosts. Every step was danger, every corner a risk. But still they pressed forward, for one carried hope, and the other carried kindness, and together they defied the wrath of an emperor. The chase was not over. It had only just begun. The tunnels under the city were dark and endless. The walls dripped with water, and the air smelled of stone and rust. The human walked carefully, carrying the boy when his weak leg gave out. The boy's crutch tapped softly against the ground. Echoing in the silence above them, the city thundered with shouts and horns. The Emperor's soldiers searched every corner. Their torches lit up the night. Their voices carried through the streets. No mercy for the human. Find him! The boy clung to the man's shoulder, his alien eyes filled with fear. Why don't you leave me? He whispered, his voice trembling. If you escape alone, you can live, but with me, you will be caught. The man stopped, his rough hand tightening around the boy's arm. He looked at him with steady eyes, his voice firm but gentle. You are not a burden, you are not broken, and I will never leave you behind. The boy's eyes filled with tears. He pressed his face against the man's chest. In that moment he felt safer than he had in his entire life. But safety was only an illusion. A noise came from behind them. Shouts, boots clanging on stone. The soldiers had found the entrance to the tunnels. Torches flickered in the distance. The boy gasped, his hand shaking. They are here! The man's mind raced. There were two paths ahead, one narrow and hidden, leading deeper into the tunnels, the other wide, leading toward the river. The hidden path could save him, but the wide path would draw the soldiers after him. Leaving the boy in the dark, he looked at the child, then at the flickering torches behind them. He knew what he had to do. It was not a choice of survival. It was a choice of kindness. Listen, he said, kneeling in front of the boy. You will take the hidden path. Follow it until you see the light at the end. Do not stop. Do not look back. The boy's eyes widened in shock. No, not without you, please. The man placed his hands firmly on the boy's shoulders. I will lead them away. They want me, not you. You must live. The boy shook his head, tears streaming down his face. I cannot walk without you. The man lifted the crutch and placed it in the boy's hands. You can, I built this for you, now trust it. Trust yourself. The boy's chest heaved with sobs. His small voice cracked. They will kill you. Please don't go. The man smiled, though sorrow weighed on his heart. Kindness is never wasted, even if it costs everything. The soldiers' shouts grew louder, the glow of their torches filling the tunnel. The man stood tall, gripping the rusted pipe he had carried since the warehouse. He looked at the boy one last time. Run, little one. Run and never forget. Someone believed in you. The boy's hands shook as he held the crutch. He wanted to fight, to stay, but the human's eyes burned with such fierce resolve that he obeyed. He turned and stumbled into the narrow path, disappearing into the shadows. His heart broke with every step, but he kept moving. The man turned to face the soldiers. Their torches lit up the tunnel walls. Their armor clanged like drums of war. The captain stepped forward, his blade gleaming. There he is. The fool who dared defy the Emperor. The man raised the pipe in his hand, his body weary but unbroken. Not a fool, he answered. A man who chose kindness, the soldiers charged. Their swords cut through the air. Their shields thundered. The man swung the pipe with all his strength, sparks flying as iron met steel. The tunnel filled with chaos, shouts, the clash of metal, the flare of torches. The man fought like a cornered beast. Every strike was to buy the boy another step. Every bruise, every cut was a wall between the child and death. Somewhere deeper in the tunnels, the boy heard the clash of battle. He stopped, tears streaming down his face. He wanted to go back, to help, but the man's words rang in his ears. Run and never forget. With shaking arms, he pushed forward, the crutch steadying his steps. Back in the tunnel, the human bled, his arms burned, his breath ragged, but still he stood, his body blocking the soldiers. Even when they knocked him down, he rose again. Even when their blades cut his skin, he swung once more, because behind him was the one life he had sworn to protect. Finally, the captain raised his sword high. You cannot win, human. The man smiled faintly through blood. I already have. And with one last strike, he broke the captain's torch, plunging the tunnel into darkness. The boy stumbled out into the open air. The first light of dawn touched his face. He turned. Staring into the black mouth of the tunnel, his chest ached, his hands trembled, but his legs, his broken legs, stood firm beneath him. And he walked step by step, carrying not just himself but the man's choice, the choice of kindness. Behind him, the shouts of soldiers echoed faintly. But ahead, the light grew stronger. The boy whispered through his tears, I will never forget you. Never. The dawn spread across the alien city. The sky glowed orange and pink, but the streets were heavy with silence. The market stalls were closed, the alleys empty. Only soldiers filled the roads, their armor shining. Their eyes cold in the palace, the emperor sat on his throne of black stone. His crown gleamed in the morning light, his face twisted with anger. Before him, the captain of the guard knelt, bloodied and bruised. He had returned from the tunnels with broken pride. "My lord," the captain said, his voice shaking. "The human fought us in the dark. We struck him down, but—" The boy escaped. The emperor's eyes narrowed like blades. "Escaped?" he hissed, his voice echoing through the hall. "Do you mean to tell me a human slave defied my soldiers, and a broken child walked free under my nose?" The captain bowed his head lower. "Yes, Majesty, the child walks now. Strong with the crutch the human built." The emperor slammed his fist against the throne. The sound shook the room. "Unforgivable. A human dares to give hope where I decreed despair." But even as he shouted, a murmur rippled through the court. The nobles whispered among themselves, "Did you hear? The child walks. They say he smiled in the streets. They say the human gave him strength." The emperor heard their whispers, and for the first time, he felt something dangerous, not fear of the human, but fear of what the human's act had created. Hope. Later that day, the boy was found near the river. Tired, weak, but alive. The guards brought him to the palace. He clutched the crutch tightly, his eyes filled with fire. He stood in front of the emperor, trembling but unbroken. The emperor looked down at him. "You dare return here, you dare stand before me. A cursed child who was meant to crawl in shame." The boy's voice shook, but he spoke. "I crawled because they laughed. I suffered because they ignored me. But one man lifted me. One man gave me strength. And I will never forget him," the court gasped. Never before had the broken child spoken so boldly. The emperor rose from his throne, his robe sweeping the floor. "You speak of the human as if he were noble." The boy lifted his chin. He was more noble than anyone here. The emperor's rage burned, yet when his eyes fell on the crutch, on the boy standing tall, something inside him twisted. For years he had called his son weak, broken, worthless, but now, the child stood because of the human. The emperor's power had failed. The human's kindness had succeeded. In that moment, the emperor realized the truth. He could kill the human. He could silence the boy. But he could not kill the whispers. They were already spreading beyond the city walls. A story of kindness stronger than fear, and no empire could stop a story once it was born. He turned sharply, his voice cold. "Take the boy away, keep him hidden from the court, and speak no more of the human." But the nobles had already heard, the servants had already whispered. The guards had already seen, and outside the palace, the people were already talking. They say the broken child walks. They say a human gave him hope. They say kindness is stronger than the crown. The emperor sat back on his throne. His heart heavy with silent fury. He had won the battle, but he had already lost the war, far from the palace. In the tunnels, silence returned. The human's body lay still, his hands rough and scarred, his face calm in death. He had given everything. Not for glory, not for power, but for one boy's chance to walk and above. That boy carried his memory like fire. Every step he took with the crutch echoed with the man's choice. Every smile he gave carried the weight of sacrifice. And though the emperor tried to bury the truth, the people remembered. The whispers grew into voices. The voices grew into songs, and the songs told the tale of a human who chose kindness over fear. The boy whispered to himself as he walked the palace halls, "I will never forget you, and one day, they will all know your name." The emperor turned his face away, but deep in his heart he could not escape the realization. All his power, all his laws, all his wrath, had been broken by one man's kindness.